I like big books, and I cannot lie. Hello, welcome to my channel, another bibliophile reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm doing a tag, worth every page, the big book tag, created by Shelly Swearingen. Shelly apparently made a video about the mammoth books that she loved, and then one night Steve Donougher called her late, urging her to turn her video into a tag. So she did. Maybe the lessons learned from that for Shelly is, don't give your phone number to Steve Donougher. Although I have met Steve Donougher in person in Boston, and he's just as nice in person as he is on his videos. But I don't think he has my phone number. Well, anyway, this is a video that encourages people to talk about some big books, some mammoth books that they love, and a mammoth book is essentially 800 pages or more. From Shelly's video, big books can be intimidating, but some are absolutely worth the time, the effort, the wrist strain. In this tag, share 3 or more books around 800 pages or longer that you believe earned every single page, whether they were emotionally sweeping, intellectually satisfying, or just wildly entertaining. These chunksters that prove their worth. And I am going to show you some big chunksters that are worth every page. And then another channel, Emily, said, share 3 or more chunksters that you want to read. So I'm going to share some books that I want to read too. So what books do I think are worth every page? No big surprise, this book keeps coming up in these videos. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. In my edition, it is 1,399 pages long. Different translations and different editions, of course, will vary in length. This is the Anthony Briggs translation. War and Peace absolutely earns its place on a list of the great books, novels of the Western canon. It is an extremely satisfying experience. But you do have to take your time with this book. It is not necessarily a page-turner for plot, but all the characters are fascinating. It is an historical novel about Russia during the Napoleonic era and Russia going to war with Napoleon. You will probably struggle with some of the character names and keeping track of all the characters. You will also have to learn to deal with Tolstoy's digressions into history and philosophy. I actually really enjoyed those digressions immensely. Do read this book if you've never read it before. War and Peace absolutely deserves to be worth every page. Another big chunkster of a book, Jerusalem by Alan Moore. 1,266 pages in this hardcover edition. There is apparently a paperback edition that is split into 3 volumes. I would recommend that or the Kindle version because this book really does strain your wrists. And it is a fascinating look about a small town in England. Maybe is considered a small city. It is a city that Alan Moore grew up in. I think he may still live there. And he absolutely loves his native place in England. But this story starts off. There's a young boy, I think he's 3, 4 years old in the story, and he starts choking on a small item, and his mother rushes him to the hospital, but he is pronounced dead at the hospital. Now, he has not been dead very long, and the hospital is able to resuscitate the boy. And then he goes on to lead a somewhat normal English life until he's an adult, and he has another accident. And he has another brush with near death. And in this second brush with near death, he remembers what it was like to be dead when he was about 3, 4 years old and going into an afterlife. This is an afterlife unlike anything else you have ever read. There are lots of dead people. There are dead children, known as the Dead Gang, that this boy joins. You get to meet the devil, Asmodeus. And who does not love a novel where you meet the devil? This is also a highly experimental book. There is a chapter written in a variety of English that has never been done before. It is James Joyce's sister, who had mental health issues, and she creates her own language in her head, and the reader gets to experience it on the page. There is a long, sort of epic poem, not that long, it's about 20 pages, 30 pages, something like that, if I remember correctly, and you get to experience a play, all within this novel, all within this strange afterlife. An absolutely fascinating novel, but it does take some time and effort to get through this. I listened to the audiobook, and I also plan to reread this sometime while listening to the audiobook and reading along with the text. 2666 by Roberto Bolano, translated from the Spanish. This is really sort of 5 novellas put together to form a novel. The storylines do overlap. There is a story of a reclusive German author who may or may not be on the list to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. And there are some students who get a rumor that he is living in Mexico or has been seen in Mexico, and they want to go find him. And then there is a chapter, a novella, which is one of the most disturbing novellas I've ever read. It's about a bunch of murders in a Mexican city on the border of the United States. And this chapter is essentially detail after detail, very gruesome, about lots of women who are being murdered. These are women on the margins, drug addicts, prostitutes. And who cares about the death of a drug addict or a prostitute? Roberto Bolano cares. He wants you to see them as more than just murder victims, but the way he chooses it, by the extreme graphic detail of their death, is particularly odd and harrowing. It's a very disturbing piece to read in here. But all in all, I really enjoyed this book. I have read it twice. Technically, this novel is unfinished, but the translator explained he was nearly done with it. Just this close to being done. But it is an unfinished novel, but it is still an excellent novel, and I do think it is worth every page. Now let me get on to some of the digital books that I loved. Les Miserables of Victor Hugo, translated from the French. I read the Christine Donougher translation, which is 1,456 pages long. There are other translations of Les Miserables. Some of them are edited for length because Victor Hugo, like Tolstoy, loved his digressions. But the digressions in Les Miserables are indeed just as fascinating as the rest of the story. And if you do not know the story, it is of Jean Valjean, who one night, when really hungry, commits a theft to get himself some food and is sentenced to prison. He does get out of prison, he escapes, and he becomes a hero, a champion for the poor and the downtrodden. And I think that is a lesson what Victor Hugo was trying to teach in the 19th century needs to be relearned in the 21st century, especially in the United States. Victor Hugo is an exciting, thrilling story. It is definitely worth every page. The next books I listened to on audio. Technically, it is a trilogy, and that is the Natchez Burning Trilogy by Greg Iles. The first book, Natchez Burning, is 816 pages. The second book, The Bone Tree, is 832 pages. And the third book just misses out being a mammoth, and that is Mississippi Blood, which was 736 pages. Now, I'm calling this really one book, even though it's published as a trilogy, because you get to the end of Natchez Burning, one act of the story is done, but another act has to follow, and then followed by a third act. Essentially, this is the story of white supremacists in Mississippi who committed some brutal acts in the 60s, and through a variety of reasons, those acts, what they did, are resurfacing in the early 2000 aughts, and these white supremacists don't want their crimes uncovered. I think this is an especially poignant tale because even though Greg Iles does go out on the limb and is a little, he cannot quite hold back the storyline and lets it get out of control with some wild things happening, but is essentially the story of white supremacists and their need to want to hold that white supremacy down and keep others under them. It is an especially important lesson for people to learn nowadays because these white supremacists in the story were a little bit reserved, but if this book had been written now, they would not have been so reserved. These people with these ideas are coming to the surface, and even though Greg Iles' characters are fictional, their feelings, their attitudes, what they want to do to other people are completely believable. And Greg Iles tells an exciting story, very thrilling, and I can highly recommend the Not Just Burning trilogy. All three books together come to 2,284 pages, worth every page. So what are some mammoths that I want to read? I was gathering up some ideas this morning and I came across a book. This is Anniversaries 1 and 2 by Hugo Johnson. That's U-W-E. I know I'm mispronouncing his first name. And this was originally published in the 70s. It is considered one novel, even though it is in 2 volumes. It is 1,668 pages long. And each volume does continue. That's how many pages, because the second volume starts on page whatever it is. Let's see. Yeah, it starts about page 880. So NYRB Classics definitely considers this one novel. It is the story of a German woman living in New York City starting in 1968. It is told in diary format. And the first entry of the diary is August 21st. I have decided I'm going to start reading this book on August 21st. And since this is a diary, I will read one entry per day until I finish it a year later. How exciting is that? It is a very famous German novel, and I'm excited to give it a try. I have read parts of it before, and I wanted to continue, but the book is so long, and I tried to read it as just one long book, and that didn't work. But maybe reading it as one entry per day will work. Another chunkster that I definitely want to give a shot to is Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. This is a biography of Mark Twain. It is 1,198 pages long. I've always admired Mark Twain as an author. He would be my kind of guy if I lived back then, so I definitely want to get to this biography. Another chunkster that I know I'm going to be reading in 2026 is Gravity's Rainbow. This is already set to read starting in January through February. I am doing this with Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, and anyone is welcome to join this group read of Gravity's Rainbow. I have listened to the audiobook of Gravity's Rainbow before, but this time I'm going to be listening to the audiobook while reading along. Now, this very old paperback edition is 887 pages long. The print is teeny tiny. I also have a Kindle edition, so I'll probably be reading this on the Kindle edition. And it is a fascinating postmodern novel set during World War II. I am not going to explain the plot line. It is very complicated and difficult, which is why you should probably read this as a group. And you can join us starting in January. Another book that I want to read, which I stole from Shelly Swearingen, is M, Son of the Century by Antonio Scarlatti. It is 785 pages long, and it is the story of the rise of Mussolini. I am becoming very interested in how dictators and authoritarians rise, so this is a novel I definitely want to dig into. Another book that I have been threatening to read for many years as I've done this BookTube channel is Miss Mackintosh, My Darling by Marguerite Young. I have 2 editions of this book. This one is 1,404 pages long. My hardcover is 1,189 pages long. This is another postmodern novel about a woman who gets on a bus to meet an old nanny from her childhood, and is the story of her thoughts on this bus. That's how it's been explained to me. I've never read it. Another hard postmodern novel. I am not sure I'm going to read this. It may be too much of a book to read next year, or maybe not. And lastly, I have one other big postmodern novel that I've been thinking about reading. This is Women and Men by Joseph McElroy. It is 1,192 pages long. This is a story of a man and a woman in New York City. I believe they live in the same apartment building. And the storylines don't converge, if I have read the criticism correctly. A book that is hard to find nowadays, but if you can, you should read it. I do want to read it someday. It's just another book that's a chunkster that kind of intimidates me. And now, lastly, I want to open this up for suggestions. Seduce Me, the long book, 800 pages long. That's not a difficult novel or a piece of difficult nonfiction. I want something easy peasy, nice and easy to read, that you just turn the pages and enjoy it. So make some suggestions in the comments of this video of an easy book to read. I have some ideas of where this could go. For whatever reason, my wife bought an audio version of Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, which is 850 pages long. I also picked up the Kindle version when that was on sale for 99 cents or $1.99. So maybe I should try this bizarre time travel romance, or maybe I just wouldn't like it at all. Another idea is to finally finish reading Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. That is 1,206 pages in the Kindle edition. I read the first 2 volumes of Lord of the Rings when I was in high school, but I never finished the book. Maybe it's about time to reread the first 2 books and finally get around to reading the third, because it is the most famous fantasy book ever written. But I'm also open to other suggestions. Leave them in the comments if you have one. I think a lot of people have already been tagged in this video. It is going around like wildfire, but I will tag some people that have recently left a comment on one of my videos, and that is reading ideas, quaint and curious volumes, Jim's books for reading and stuff, and Mick has read a book. Some of these channels are newer and smaller, and some of them are very well established. You don't have to do this tag if you don't want to. I'm not even sure if everyone reads big chunky books that I have tagged, but if you do, tell us what big books, what mammoth books are worth every page. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading mammoth books.